I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakhimes. All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays. What's going on, everyone? Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks and Game Time. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. I am so excited. NFL draft analyst for The Athletic, Dane Brugler, is joining us to talk about the Patriots draft class in 2024. Their draft class for 2023 got some pretty good players out of there, a few starters on both sides of the ball. And we're also going to preview some top positions of need for the Patriots in the upcoming draft and some potential fits that we can look out for early on. No one better to dive into this with than you, Dane. So without further ado, brother, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing?
Hey, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. I've got 4 kids, and so we're almost to Christmas, and so things are busy here, making sure we go see the lights, we go see Santa, we do all that kind of stuff. But it's also in the heat of the end of college football, the transition to the draft. So busy times right now.
Before we get into it, I'm curious, what's the hot toy on the market right now? Is there something that all the kids are asking for, or what is it?
That's a good question because I have a mix. I have my son is 9, my daughter's 8. I have 2 twins that are 3, and so we have the whole wide range of kind of the video games to the hoverboard to all these different things. So I mean, let's just say that the Christmas lists were long, and they're not going to get everything on that list for sure. Right. But yeah, no, I don't know if there is one thing that, I feel like, when we were growing up, there was definitely like the hot item each year. This year, I don't know if there is that one thing, but it feels like kids have more access to so many different technologies. And so some of the things that kids are getting these days, it's just kind of crazy, but it's just, as technology grows, we have to kind of grow with it, and kids just get introduced to it at a younger and younger age. It's crazy.
Dude, you said hoverboard, and I was like, you mean like from Back to the Future? Like, what hoverboard? I was asking for like Spider-Man web shooters in an apartment with carpet, which is absolutely insane. Like Hulk hands. If there was a hoverboard, I think I would have asked for that pretty much every year, just different colors.
Heck yeah. Give me a Game Boy game, and I was happy. It was good. That was a good Christmas for me. So yeah, I hear you.
Simple time. But all right, we got to get to the football part of this show. I can talk about Christmas presents all day, but let's start off with Drake May. Any conversation with this Patriots team has to start with him. Obviously, foundational piece, hopefully their franchise quarterback. He's been really impressive. There has been a level of growth that's happened for him this season that I didn't really expect. I figured, Alex Van Pelt has said in the past, the footwork he can figure out. I didn't think that was a huge deal, but I didn't see the precision, the ability to work in structure, know where his problems are so consistently the way we've seen. Big credit to Van Pelt, but also to him, because I remember when I was reading a report on him, you were saying, it may take time for him just to mature. The guy's 22 years old, and it's the NFL. You're leading a locker room of grown men. So what's your take on what we've seen from Drake May so far? What did you kind of expect from his pre-draft profile? And then what's also surprised you now that we've seen what he could potentially be in the league?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the question mark, was what would be the timeline for Drake to kind of figure things out and show that type of progress. And through 8 starts, I mean, you have to feel optimistic about the growth that he's shown, the athletic instincts, the arm talent, the toughness. And I'm a big believer in the older brother theory. When you have 3 highly accomplished older brothers, you're just trying to keep up with them. And that natural competitive toughness, that just becomes ingrained in you. And I think that's something that's really helped Drake as, on and off the field, both in terms of the physical toughness, but also the mental toughness and what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. I mean, going back to the process, like you mentioned, I think, he was overanalyzed, just like all these quarterbacks are, as you go through the ringer of 6 months of draft talk. But people got so caught up in the footwork and some of these other minor issues, the reckless tendencies that he had on the college film. I think those were fair concerns and something that we've seen come up, with him in the NFL. When he forces things, that's when things can get, a little bit off schedule. you look at his 8 interceptions that he's had, 5 have come on first or second down. And that's what we're talking about, kind of forcing things sometimes, especially when you get pressured. You have to move your feet and you're trying to create something. It's a double-edged sword where you don't want to eliminate that from his game. You want him to have free reign to, if he needs to escape, let him do it. Let him go create something. But there will be mistakes that come along with that. But specifically the last 3 games, watching those tapes, I've been really encouraged by just the not forcing thing as much, taking what the defense gives him. It's much different than I think, you go back, watch the Titans tape or the Bears game. There were a lot of all or nothing plays in those games, it felt like, where he made some big time throws, big time plays, but there were also some turnover worthy plays that we just can't have that and expect to win these games. So I think he's reeled back these last 3 weeks, some of those reckless decisions and still some throws that, you wish he could have back, but he's shown better control, better process. And I think that's the key for any quarterback, rookie quarterback, is you want to see progress, not perfection. His smarts, the arm talent, those are the main selling points. I still don't think he gets enough credit for the athlete that he is. I mean, it was all over the North Carolina tape. And now it's the same thing in New England where you look at Drake May and he doesn't have nearly the snaps that Josh Allen does, yet they have the same number of forced missed tackles this year. I think, it's obviously there's a lot of people excited about Drake May going into the process and then at draft time. And then especially now, I just feel like, he's converted maybe some doubters that he had during the process. And if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm just feeling optimistic, because I think for the future, there's a high percentage chance that we have the quarterback right. And that gives you optimism, no matter what the final record is this year. Going into the offseason, we feel like we have the quarterback right. And there's a lot of teams that wish they had that type of feeling going into the offseason.
I love that you mentioned taking what the defense has been giving him and the way that he is kind of turning back a little bit and forcing throws. You see it towards the end of games, and you can understand that. You're a rookie. You understand, I think, there's a little bit of a talent deficit. A couple of his picks have just been him trying to go for it all at the end of those games and really get a chunk, and you can hardly blame him for it. But that evolution and seeing where he needed to have a deep throw in his last game where the deep ball was one of the strengths of his game, and he's running around, but he's also running more and more, keeping his eyes downfield. And I remember at UNC just watching him, I'm like, this doesn't look like a guy who's 22, much less a guy that has only a couple years of starting experience. And the way that he recognized coverages, where obviously, sometimes rotations are going to get young quarterbacks, but it felt more like he was reading space and leverage and less like he's saying, oh, okay, well, it's cover 4. And, just like the gears are turning, it felt really natural. I think you're seeing that, but also learning, what can I get away with? What can I not? And really taking those lessons, like the picks, very few of them have been the same error. Sometimes it's inaccuracy. Sometimes it's you don't see the defender. But I'm not sitting here saying every week, oh, God, Drake, just figure this out. The strip sacks were an issue. But then you look at last week, he gets sacked 4 times. Great job protecting himself and the ball. So that's been fantastic. We could make this the Drake May show if we wanted to. But I do also want to address the rest of the Patriots draft class this season, because Marcellus Dial is the only other player outside of Drake May who's been a regular contributor for this Patriots offense. Now, Caden Wallace gets a bit of a pass. He's been dealing with an ankle injury, hasn't played in a while. That is what it is. But Jalen Polk is someone where you can maybe debate where exactly they took him, but it seemed pretty unanimous. This is a guy with great football character, great just football player overall, the hands, the ability to win in those tough situations and win at each level. He hasn't really done much for them. There were a couple promising games early on, but then the hands became an issue. Now it just feels like he's kind of stuck in his head. Javon Baker flashed early in the summer. He's kind of fallen off, really only getting a handful of snaps here and there. And then Layden Robinson, they're trying to put him into the lineup, played left guard for the first time, actually. But honestly, when I'm looking, it feels like his head's kind of spinning. It looks really raw. And you expect that to a degree from rookies, but as Patriots fans, obviously, you're a draft and develop team. You'd like to see more from those guys. So what's your take on the rest of the rookie class? Are there any guys where it really did surprise you that they haven't come along quite yet? Or were there some guys where you were saying in the pre-draft process, hey, it might take a while, but they've got the tools. You just got to get it out of them?
Yeah, and we might be looking at this draft class differently if Caden Wallace doesn't get hurt, if he doesn't have that ankle issue, and we get a better look at how he plays as a rookie. I think this class would be looked at a little bit differently because it's so important that you hit on those top 100 picks. Obviously, if May reaches his full potential, we're going to look back at this draft class and say, oh, it was a success, no matter what else happens. But you have to hit on these draft picks, especially top 100 picks, the day 2 picks, to put a talented roster around your young quarterback. So, Layden Robinson, he's playing like a 4th rounder where it's up and down. It's not, I think they're doing the right thing by playing him. You have to see what you have. So going into the offseason, you have a better idea of, okay, you know what? We think that Robinson can be a guy for us, at least compete for a starting job going into next year's training camp. Or if he struggles, that maybe you don't have that type of confidence. But I think, the lack of production from the rookie receivers, that's going to be the main talking point here with this draft class. It's discouraging, no doubt. I think Javon Baker was always a receiver who I had a tough time getting on board with. Twitter kept telling me he was a 2nd-round pick, last spring, and I couldn't find a single NFL team that thought he would go before day 3. And several teams had him off the board just because the talent was there, but his game there's so many inefficiencies in his game that you don't always see the talent. So if NFL coaches can't trust you, you're not going to see the field. And hopefully a full year in that Patriots organization, he comes into the offseason and the next year just with a better understanding of what it takes to be a pro, and hopefully he can break through. But obviously, yes, the main frustration has been Jalen Polk. And the fact that they passed on Ladd McConkey makes it worse. Obviously, they were looking for an outside receiver. McConkey's an inside receiver. Polk was probably their best available left on the board at that point. But we saw so many receivers go in the first 35 picks that it felt like a reach to take Polk that early. I thought it was about a full round too early. He was my number 75 player in that draft. So, you love the toughness, like you said, the character, solid athlete for that size. I think he catches the ball well away from his body, but he struggled to separate on the Washington film, and he wasn't great finishing catches in traffic. And so far, that's kind of been the story with Polk in the NFL, where he's not creating that separation. When he does get the targets, he's not consistently completing those catches when there's a defender right there in his hip pocket. So I understand the frustration from fans. I don't think we've seen him play his best ball yet. He should continue to get better just because the bar has been set so low. But it did feel like a reach, and they forced this pick to be a receiver, and it's obviously it hasn't worked out to this point yet. So receiver is going to be such a major need this offseason as they go and kind of re-examine everything. You're not going to give up on the player, but at the same time, it's not going to stop you from investing in wide receivers, either free agency or early in next year's draft, based on what Polk has put on the field so far this year.
I agree with the Polk pick, and then also with the Caden Wallace pick. I did like Polk. I think I was so excited I maybe didn't want to listen as much to it's probably a little bit early, because like you mentioned, I tried to wrap my head around Ladd, but it was just, DeMario Douglas is going to play. You can't really have 2 guys that size. That's just a tough way to live in the NFL unless you have a guy who can scheme around it. Van Pelt's done well, but he's not a Sean McVay, where he really understands how to maximize his talent and put guys in those positions. So I'm curious, do you think that there is a lesson that Elliott Wolf and his staff need to learn from the last draft class? Like you mentioned, Polk was kind of a reach, maybe Caden Wallace as well, where, again, it's a situation where you could argue if they like his tools, maybe they can move him to left like they said the plan was. But there were other guys that they maybe could have gotten, but that were younger, and I think they valued his experience. But did it feel like they did maybe force those picks, and would you have a different set of mind if you were Wolf and his staff for this draft?
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see what their draft board looked like at receiver. What kind of gap did they have between, the guys that were taken late first round and Polk at that point? Like, was there a huge gap? Did they have them all kind of clustered together? I'd just be interested to see just kind of how they felt about Polk specifically, how he compared to a Brian Thomas, to Xavier Legette, to all these other receivers that went in that top 35 mix. And there was 9 of them. So, it's easy. The easiest version of Monday morning quarterback is looking back in the draft with hindsight. But it did feel like, both of those picks on day 2 felt like reaches in the moment. And, so far that's just, it's played out the way it has. But like we said before, you have to hit on these day 2 picks, and going back, it both felt like reaches. And whether it was because they felt like they needed to address those 2 positions specifically, wide receiver and offensive tackle. I get throwing resources at 2 premium positions, but if you're not convinced of the right players, then you're wasting draft capital. So in hindsight, I think probably making different draft picks at that point, but it's easy to say at this when it's all said and done, easy to go back in hindsight and say that.
Prize Picks. It's the best place to get real money action on sports. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So run your game all season long with us on Prize Picks. Prize Picks puts their members first. Withdrawals are safe, fast, and secure. When your picks hit, you get your money in as little as 15 minutes. They also offer Venmo cash outs for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. If you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that bonus. It's guaranteed. Do you think James Cook will get more than 60 yards this week? Joe Burrow more than 1.5 touchdowns? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game all season long on Prize Picks. So again, sign up today, and if you're going to do so, download the app and use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
And just to close this out, Jalen Polk, the fact that he has been so unproductive, it's kind of historic, where if he ended up turning it around, he would be one of the very rare cases. So I'm curious, you've seen this kind of thing happen a ton, the guys who maybe do struggle and continue to struggle, or the guys who struggle and then maybe figure it out. Where do you project? And again, it is early. I'm not holding you to this, but where do you think Polk's career could go? And what does he look like if he does hit his ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, he's still very young, and he put enough good ball on tape in college that you believe he can break out of this. Some guys, it takes time when you're making this transition to the NFL, and you're seeing a lot more press coverage for the first time in your life. You're just asked to, even just the terminology of the playbook is some guys, it takes a year to get that down. Just all the different ads to, it's a lot of one-word terminology. It's a lot of alerts. It's a lot, it takes a lot to fully understand it, be comfortable with it, so you can go out and play. A lot of rookies, they're doing too much thinking and not reacting. And with receiver, it's such a timing-based position. That's usually why we see a lot of receivers, and not to this level, but we see a lot of receivers, not have maybe the year we expect them to as rookies, because it takes a lot. So by no means should you just give up on this player, but at the same time, it is so imperative that you get the receiver right, that you have to go into the off season thinking we're going to do whatever it takes to upgrade. And if that means that, we're investing a first round pick, if we're investing big money in free agency, obviously you're not going to let the hope that Polk turns into something stop you from doing that. But no, I do think that he can turn this around and at least compete for a starting job next year. But, it's going to take a lot of work on his end to make that happen.
Absolutely. And, details are important in any offensive system, but in the West Coast specifically, where Alex Van Pelt has said some version of pretty much everything you hit on. So, it's kind of nice to hear it echo a little bit, because, like, for example, Demario Douglas, we'll touch on him. There's a play where he and Drake May aren't on the same page because he ran a 3-step slant instead of a 5-step slant. Small things like that completely throw off a play. And he's also said for Javon Baker, when everyone asks, it's like, why aren't we seeing Javon? He's got all the talent. He said, yeah, he can separate, got great hands, but you need to have, like you said, the coach's trust, where we know you're going to line up in the same place. We know you're going to do your assignment the way it's drawn up. And, sometimes there's been instances where Javon was supposed to block and he ran a route. So it is just sometimes, like you said, you're just thinking and there's a lot going on. So sometimes you do have to give these guys just a year to kind of understand what life's like in the NFL, not have to worry about just understanding the playbook and actually be able to play. But now we will move on to the 2023 Patriots draft class. Got some starters out of that one. Christian Gonzalez picked up right where he left off after an impressive rookie year, has been dominant, lockdown, covering the opponent's best receivers pretty much every single week. Keon White turning into one of the most disruptive interior rushers in the NFL. And then at wide receiver, Kayshon Boutte, very quiet his rookie year, but another guy who kind of had things click for him in his sophomore season. Now he's a starting next receiver for the Patriots, one of their more reliable guys. Demario Douglas has pretty much been a starter since training camp of last year. He started going off with the group with Hunter Henry and everybody, and we were like, oh, yeah, no, this kid's different. They see him very, very differently than some of these other young guys. But what do you think of the Patriots sophomore class? Anybody that surprised you? Anybody that lived up to exactly what you thought? What do you think?
So is this the part of the convo where I can just gush on Christian Gonzalez?
If you want to,
okay,
the floor is yours, my friend.
I think the NFL gave Bill Belichick a lifetime achievement gift when they allowed Gonzalez to fall all the way to pick 17 in that draft. I mean, I remember going back to the summer of 2022. That's kind of when I first dive into that next year's draft class. And I had a scout tell me, hey, check out this Oregon corner just transferred over from Colorado. And I remember it was clear from the first tape that this was a dude. This guy is different. And I called my shot with him early in my preseason top 50 that year. I had him in the top 10, and he finished as my number 5 overall player in that draft. So to get him at 17 was strange, but also awesome for New England. And similar to, we've been talking about, like Drake May, like it's not been perfect. But, just seeing the optimism around him because, the Texans tape, that stands out as one of those up and down performances where, it's not always perfect. But again, you have to be encouraged by the play. He's only allowed 2 catches of 20 plus yards this year. He's not attracting a lot of flags. He's always had the athleticism, and now it's really starting to translate to NFL coverage. So, I mean, I think Gonzalez is right on par with where I projected him as a Pro Bowl level talent, a guy that should be one of your best players on defense. And I think he's on his way to doing that. I mean, you mentioned Keon White. I mean, he's exceeded what I thought. I mean, I give him a lot of credit. He was my he's a good example of I was right about him on draft day because he was my number 47 overall player that year, and he was drafted 46th. But if we did a redraft, he's not making it to pick 47. I don't think he makes it to that pick in the second round. Going back to his college tape, you love the motor, height, weight, speed freak. He could anchor versus the run. So plenty of reasons to be optimistic about that transition. But in terms of developing his craft, becoming a more nuanced pass rusher, that was the question mark. And it's probably what is keeping him from just really becoming a difference maker for the Patriots. But he has proven to be a very good starter and someone the Pats can build around. And, you mentioned Demario Douglas. He's definitely been what I think was expected as just this undersized slot presence. A lot of catches in the quick game, finds those open zones, a lot of in front of the sticks type of targets. But he's been the Patriots' best chance at finding yards after the catch in this offense. And size was always going to be the issue with him, 5'8", 180 pounds. But for a guy with smaller hands, he doesn't have a lot of drops. And that was true at Liberty. Now it's true in the NFL. The number one selling point with him is just the explosive urgency that he plays with all the time. And sometimes that'll lead to mistakes, like you referenced. But I see a guy with Douglas who probably never going to be a Pro Bowler, but he's going to outplay where he was drafted. So yeah, he's been a really good player. I really like that draft class in the moment. And then also, in hindsight, at the city, I expected, I'll take the L on that one because I had an early 5th round grade on him. So I wasn't sky high on him, but I was optimistic because you see the movement skills for a 325 pounder. He had experience at tackle and guard. It just felt like the foundational traits were there that you could develop the rest. And I know he's been banged up, and that's a key factor, but he hasn't played well when he's had his chances. It's just so rough watching that offensive line. I mean, it hurts the eyes. And I know I'm not saying anything that the Pats fans don't already know.
No. Yeah, no, it's been an adventure. You got a lot of guys on the roster that, if we're being very honest, are replacement level guys. And with City, like you said, you see the traits where when everything lands and like his strike hits and everything, you're saying, okay, this is the guy that was bullying, defensive linemen last year with Mike Nwenu, but in the strike system with Scott Peters. I think it's why they like more experienced players, where City's played a lot of football, but it was at a different level. And the coaching staff has called him inexperienced. And you're thinking, well, he's played a lot of ball, but not often has he been asked to play with the level of detail that he is now. And, sometimes he'll throw that independent hand. Last year it was 2 every time, and he's working it. but then guys are still kind of predicting getting under him. So you hope things click for him. He'll still be under contract for a couple more years. So still solid depth there. But like you said, with Demario Douglas, that explosiveness and man-to-man coverage is just really his calling card. That's what you're going to get out of him consistently. I'd like to see more downfield stuff. I feel like he flashed that with Mac Jones and he just couldn't connect with it. But now, like you mentioned, especially with the offensive line the way it is, a lot of the Patriots offense really has been more inside that quick game. But we're going to close out the look behind. We're going to start looking ahead into the 2025 draft class. The Patriots, they got quarterback figured out. Fantastic. But now just have to worry about every other premium position and then some others. But we're just going to focus on the big ones: wide receiver, left tackle, and pass rusher. I'm even going to say flexible. It can be edge. It can be interior. Pass rush is pass rush. So first off, what are your thoughts on each of those positions in terms of the kind of players we're going to get in this class, where the strengths are maybe? And then after that, we'll go into some players you think would be good fits at any round for the Patriots.
Yeah, and unfortunately for the Patriots, this isn't last year in terms of the left tackle talent or just the offensive tackle talent in general. We saw 6 tackles go in the top 20 last April. This year, we're still going to see tackles go just because every team needs them. And, if it's a position that will get bumped up and teams will reach on those guys just because if you don't, you'll be left without a chair if you don't take them early. But there's a pretty big drop off in terms of quality depth from this group compared to last year's group. But like I said, we'll still see them go early. Wide receiver, last year was historic with 3 in the top 9 and then 10 in the first 37. Like, we're not going to see that this year, but there's still some good receiver talent, just not as many of them. So receivers an okay position. I wouldn't call it strong. I wouldn't call it weak. It's just kind of, it's solid. There will be options round 1, round 2, round 3, but not at the depth isn't the same as we've seen in past years. Pass rusher, it's one of the strengths, I would say, in terms of defensive line, both on the edge, on the interior. It's a really good group. Maybe not as proven as some other past years, but the talent is there. And so maybe a little more risk involved with this year's defensive line group, but the talent, I think, has teams excited. And, even talking about corner as well, corner is usually a strong group just because there's so many of these guys. This year, not as much. I'm pretty disappointed in the corner group based on what we've seen so far. Only 3, maybe 4 you consider taking in the top 30, 40 picks. It's more of an okay group when in the past few years, especially, it's been a strong group.
When you mention the defensive guys, that sounds like it's right in the Patriots ballpark, because when it comes to pass rusher, really, I feel like they need a guy who can come in and give them some juice, maybe develop into a well-rounded player, because you got Keon White, you got Anthony Jennings. You're not trying to cut into their snaps, but on those third downs, you'd really like some guys on the edge or even on the interior that scare you a little more. Obviously, Barmore plays into that, but he's kind of on the mend. And then corner, you got Gonzo, you got Marcus Jones, some young guys in Isaiah Bolden and Alex Austin that you like, and you think maybe they can grow into something. We'll see how they close out the season. But you'd also like a little more depth with Jonathan Jones. You don't know if he's going to come back, but even if he does, we're already seeing he's kind of losing a step, as reliable as he is still.
Let's talk about Game Time. The exclusive ticketing partner of the CLNS Media Network has the new Game Time Picks feature that filters out the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. If you're heading out west to Arizona, you can get into Patriots at Cardinals right now for as little as $57. And the next home game for the Patriots, Chargers coming to town at Gillette Stadium, $40 is the get-in price. And that is with the their all-in pricing feature toggled on, which means you're not going to get hit with any hidden fees. No surprises at checkout. That is the grand total. That's probably one of my favorite features of the Game Time app. The other one is seeing your seat view right from the app. Not all ticketing apps do that, but Game Time does. You can find out, if you're not familiar with the stadium, are you going to be seated behind a pole, or are you going to not have a great view of midfield, anything like that, you can check it out right on the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, guys?
Game Time.
But I want to dive in first for potential fits at left tackle because you actually released your first mock draft today, had Will Campbell, who you listed as a left tackle / guard, going to the Patriots with their current slotted pick. So first off, let's get into the Will Campbell discussion because we've heard the biggest concern is the arm length. I know Dante Scarnecchia always said that arm length is overrated, but you really don't want it less than 33 inches even still. I believe Campbell is right under that, but even still, he is arguably, and really any opinion that I've seen that I respect, he is the best offensive lineman in this class. So why did you have the Patriots taking him, and how much are you concerned about whether he can play left guard or whether at some point he's going to have to slide inside?
Yeah, I hit send on that tweet this morning with the mock and then closed out Twitter and started to care about my mental health.
Seasoned vet move right there.
Yeah. So I apologize if I did not get to your questions if you hit me up on Twitter. But Will Campbell, yeah, he has his warts. He doesn't have ideal arm length. He's going to be right around 33. It might be 32 3/4, 32 7/8, right around 33. And so there are times when some rushers can break him down, wrap his shoulder. But I'm more encouraged by the positives that he offers instead of getting hung up on maybe a fraction of an inch that he's missing with his arm length. He's been a starting left tackle in the SEC the last 3 years, and he's still just 20 years old. He's given up 1 sack since his freshman year. I love how balanced he stays through engagement. His hands will control rushers. He sustains in the run game. He's fluid throughout his body, so he can strain and finish. Teams are kind of split about where he should play in the NFL. Is he a tackle? Is he a guard? Should he bump inside? Look, regardless, Campbell is, in my opinion, the favorite to be the first offensive lineman drafted. And so we'll see kind of where the Patriots fall do they view him as a tackle? Do they view him as a guard? Time will tell on that. But for this first mock draft, I gave him the best offensive lineman on the board. And, free agency can obviously change things. Time will tell on that. But I do want to mention, too, the wild card of this tackle class is going to be Josh Simmons, the left tackle from Ohio State, who was trending to be the OT1 in this class back in October when he suffered a non-contact knee injury against Oregon. Needed surgery. He's been out, but he did declare for the draft. He's going to be part of this class. He has the talent to go early, but that knee injury is a question mark right now. So we won't know really too much until the combine comes, when we just have a better idea of where teams view Simmons. Will they still look at him as a top 20 guy? Will he fall out of the first round? Is he someone worth rolling the dice on in the second round if there are some question marks? So Josh Simmons is kind of the wild card of this tackle class.
Yeah, I know that Drew Rosenau said he's ahead of schedule and that he's still going to be a first-round pick, but of course, the agent's going to say
gotta love
that.
Drew.
Exactly. You got to stand up for your guy, but at the same time, a left tackle with a knee injury, that is very scary. Hey, they take Will Campbell, Josh Simmons slips, and they want to double dip at offensive line, I will not be mad. And with Will Campbell, like you mentioned, you can talk about the arm length and all that. And I understand the character and all those things. The player's still got to be able to function on the field, and I don't think that's a question. But when you read about the amount of respect that Campbell has in that LSU program, where he got the number 7 and what that means to their program, being a captain, again, at the age of 20 years old, being as young as he is. If your first-round picks in your Elliott Wolf in back-to-back years are Drake May and Will Campbell, getting 2 young guys with leadership potential who can go into those rooms and really take some command probably early on just by walking the walk and being active and dominant on the field, I think you're doing pretty well. It's tough for me whether or not I would like them to go there quite that early, but at the same time, if you're getting a great offensive lineman, like we see what I want to be the Ravens, I want to be the Eagles. I want to be these teams that have these just stud linemen that can dominate the game. And once you really need to just run when everybody knows you're going to run, they can do that, and they can protect their franchise quarterbacks. But
look at the Steelers, what they did last offseason. They invested in the offensive line in a big way. They went offensive line first round, offensive line second round. They went offensive line in the first round the year before. I mean, they threw a lot of resources at it, and that has helped them become a more consistent unit up front. And obviously it's paying dividends with the win-loss record. So that's the attitude the Patriots should take into this offseason. Throw as many resources as you can on the offensive line. And then also, receiver, who I'm sure we'll talk about next.
We can talk about it right now. I like that philosophy. I'm trenches all the way. But you do have people out there who say, you know what, maybe you want a receiver because an offensive lineman's great, but they can't score points, and a receiver who can win quickly does make a difference for an offense. So who are some receivers that you think could fit? Because I know Ted McMillan is at the top of everyone's boards, and I want to hear your thoughts on him. But also some other guys that maybe they can get in the second round, maybe third round. One of my guys, Pat Bryant, I'm just in love with right now. Curious your thoughts on him as well, but fire away. What do you think about these receivers? Probably more the X types because that's where the Patriots have just had a void for so long.
Yeah, Ted McMillan, man, he's so much fun. 6'4.5", 212 pounds. His 40 time's not going to blow anybody away. The routes are good, not great, but where T-Mac shines is at the catch point. He catches everything, and he catches it away from his body with his hands. He has this Gumby-ish body flexibility, so he's making these crazy adjustments. He high points with ease. Very similar to T. Higgins, who is a name brought up quite a bit as a possible free agent target for this team. But he has the ball winning instincts that you want to pair with Drake May. And so if they get T. Higgins, great. If they went after T-Mac, great. I think, it's kind of similar with a guy that has size and you kind of throw it in their zip code and there's a good chance they come down with it. So yeah, if they went T-Mac in the first round, I would not, blink. I think it would make a ton of sense. If they do wait until day 2, like I said, this isn't as deep of a wide receiver class, but there's definitely some name. Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State could be in that second round mix. Nothing great about his skill set, but he is just good across the board. Route runner, size, speed, catching the football. It's all above average. And so you're getting a really reliable receiver. If he falls out of the first round, he would be a nice target early second. I'm a fan of Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. Iowa State they have like 3 guys that are going to go top 100 this year. 2 of them are receivers with Noel and then Jaden Higgins. Higgins has the size. He's a former basketball player, really good to catch point. And every year he gets better and better with the details as a receiver in terms of figuring out the routes, the steps, how to set up corners. He's getting better and better. So I don't think he's quite, he's going to step in from day one and be a true playmaker. But, when we look back at, this draft class 2-3 years from now, there's a good chance Higgins looks like one of the better pass catchers from this class. So yeah, I think this is a wide receiver group where you don't have to take them early. There will be options on day 2. But the depth is just more okay. And you mentioned Bryant, one of those depth pieces. A good player from Illinois. I do wonder what he's going to run. Is he going to be a 4.53 guy? Will he get into the 4.4s? Like I don't think the speed is necessarily what separates him. But man, he just goes out and makes plays, and that's helped him ascend from a borderline draft pick coming into the year to now all of a sudden we're talking about him and maybe a mid rounder. I do think just kind of going back to the overall draft strategy, when you draft top 5, top 10, where the Patriots will be drafting, need matters, but it shouldn't be the driving force. It shouldn't be, there's just too much attrition in NFL ball. You want to get a difference maker. This isn't Madden where you're just trying to fill out your roster. The pick should be who impacts your roster the most over the next 5 years. And so, yeah, it could be offensive line, could be wide receiver. Pass rusher is definitely going to be in that, especially if they can get an Abdul Carter. You add him to that mix, that pass rusher, 6'3", 250, freak athlete, still developing his the pass rush nuance, how to set up blockers, but the burst off the ball, the power in his hands, the quality finish. I think that makes as much sense as any of these guys we've talked about if the Patriots end up with the top 6 pick.
You're making my transition so easy because that is exactly where I was going to go with this, because I think if you are saying we are using this first round pick to help Drake May, and that is your goal, and that is totally fair. I think Will Campbell and Ted make a lot of sense. But if you're saying I want the best player available with this top 5 pick, I've been saying, you know what? Hopefully in the offseason, you can get your T. Higgins, you can get your Trey Smith, maybe a tackle or 2, so you can just grab that guy. And Abdul Carter's at the top of that list where they haven't had that edge rusher. They had Matthew Judon, but even still, the level of juice that you get from an Abdul Carter is something they haven't had on this team in a very, very long time. I think maybe Chandler Jones we're talking. So give us a little more on Abdul Carter, what you think is a potential fit for them, especially given his history, kind of like a Micah Parsons, where he's new to the defensive line, but he's got some versatility, and maybe some other guys where if they say, okay, round 1 is Drake May, maybe we do just wait and get that pure pass rusher who maybe can be more down the road.
Yeah, Jalen Carter from Georgia, Mikael Williams from Georgia. I mean, there will be options if they want to go that route. I do like Carter the most of this group. He's the most versatile. You can line him up all over the place. You can drop him in space, but you just want him continually just going after the quarterback, using that freaky burst. And there is progress that he has shown throughout the year at this new position. So I think you have optimism that he'll continue to get better. But you bet on athletes at the end of the day. And there's not a lot of Abdul Carters just walking around this earth who have that size, that power, and that explosiveness. So investing in those types of athletes, those types of potential playmakers, I think is the absolutely right way to go when you're talking about a potential top 5 pick.
Absolutely. Anybody else in maybe those mid rounds that you kind of like as a sneaky situational pass rusher type?
Hey, I'm sorry, dude. The bus is coming. I got to get my kids
Oh,
off
yeah,
the bus here.
no problem. Is it cool if I just do a quick little outro? I'll let you play yourself before we get out of here. Yeah, awesome. All right, Dane, that was so much fun. Thank you so much for being on. Now, please let the people know where they can find you and the great work you got coming down the pipeline, including, obviously, the mock draft that dropped today.
Yeah, you can find everything at The Athletic, at DP Brugler. Appreciate everyone checking it out. The Beast is going to come out here in a few months, so I can't wait to keep this conversation going.
My absolute draft Bible. Thank you again, Dane, for your time. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Now, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you next time. Peace, y'all.